Hello, hello. This is Alex Burkett, and you're listening to the Long Game Podcast. In this episode, I'm talking to Brian Massey. Brian is the co-founder and managing partner at Conversion Sciences, a conversion rate optimization agency. He's also the author of Your Customer Creation Equation. Brian and I have known each other for years, and fun fact, his book was one of the first that I read when I joined CXL and began to learn about conversion rate optimization myself. He is a natural poet and wordsmith, a creative innovator and thinker, and a conversion scientist with the lab coat to prove it. In this conversation, we cover CRO, what is it, how to do it, what it's like to found and lead an agency in this field, personal development and how to know thyself, and how to apply the CRO lens to content marketing, among many other interesting topics. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Brian Massey. Okay, so I could just start high level and ask, like, what are you doing at Conversion Sciences nowadays? What's your average day look like?
What does the average day look like? Is there an average day? So, I think, in terms of how we have kind of progressed, we're doing a lot more design. So we hired a UX guy, a guy who's steeped in UX. First and foremost, and data second. And in fact, we provide the resources for him to apply data to his design. So it's been an interesting education watching someone who has done the traditional, what I call the Mad Men design process, where you do a whole lot of research at the beginning, and then your design development team just takes over and makes a bunch of decisions based on that data and their experience and their intuition, and quite frankly, what they think the client is going to like rather than what the client's customers is going to like. And then switching him, giving the tools where he can start testing his designs against the customer's clients. And, realizing he was just talking about a pretty complex design he did, and he had designed it with lots of visuals and graphics to make the information more digestible for this particular client. And then we did some user testing. We found out that lists of things does far better for comprehension and desirability. So he's like, do this, and then the data brings me back to somewhere in the middle that drives that. So I think that's probably been the most interesting addition. The value proposition that we have been using is that we'll redesign your website, and we guarantee that the new site will outperform the old site. And I don't think there's many agencies that can do that. Beyond that, we're continuing to do the same conversion optimization we did, where we're pitching towards A/B testing, but we're doing a lot more user testing to get things off the list or to narrow down our choices for A/B testing. So I think we're continuing with the tools out there. We're continuing to get better and better at A/B testing, picking what to test, which is 90% of the challenge of A/B testing. I think something happened in 2020 because there's a lot more people coming to us saying, "I need conversion," rather than, "Hey, I heard about you guys. What do you do? How do you make things better?" So I think 2020 probably really was the year of CRO. We've been talking about it since 2010. But now people are coming and saying, "I'm calling you because I need conversion optimization." I'm like, "Oh, really? Wow." So that's been kind of gratifying over the last 18 months. It's also good for business. So
we've seen a similar tailwind with content marketing in 2020. I think it pushed a lot of people towards like the modern cutting edge practices that a lot of people have been working on for a while. How did you, I've always known you as a CRO guy, but how did you, what was the first time you stumbled upon a role that resembled CRO? I'm sure it was before we called it CRO.
Well, the closest thing was in the early 2000s, the double lots I was working for, primarily for technology companies, B2B technology companies, smaller size technology companies here in Austin. There was a little bit of a renaissance for technology in Austin, outside of the semiconductor world, which is where Austin really set its technology roots. And so that web developer that we hire that makes all the decisions about data and design, because I'm a computer scientist by training. But
Is that what you studied in college?
Yeah, that's why I'm a scientist, because I have a Bachelor of Science.
Makes all the sense to me.
Yeah. But I had come out of that and gone into sales, and I was doing my own business in the 90s. So I had this marketing orientation. So I was building landing pages and talking about conversion rates. At that point, we didn't have A/B testing. I wasn't doing any of that. But it was the Eisenberg brothers, a couple of the really godfathers of conversion optimization. They did a Wizards of the Web seminar at the Wizard Academy here, which is, I don't know if you've ever been out there, but it's an amazing business school. It's nothing to do with Harry Potter. And they're the ones that started giving it the vocabulary. It's conversion optimization, it's A/B testing, it's hypotheses, it is segmentation, understanding the different segments of buyers that are coming to the site, or shoppers for that matter. And at that point I was like, oh, yes, please. I had started working for an SEO company bringing conversion optimization so that more of the sweet organic traffic that they were getting would convert. But it quickly became pretty apparent that it's not something you can bolt onto SEO. It's its own thing. It's conversion optimization is a lot of work, and it entails everything from layout to messaging and copy, social proof, and it's just almost anything you can do on a page. There's a way to get some data that would tell you if it's a good idea or not.
So it seems like there was a small group of people who kind of got it, and I think there was some nomenclature. But how did you convince people of the value of CRO before the name existed, before like the I don't know, probably before CXL was as popular as it was? I guess, was this something you were selling to clients back at the time? Was this a movement you all had to evangelize, or was this an easy sell early on?
Yeah, and right through 2019, we've tried to convince people that they need conversion optimization, and I've never been able to figure out how to do it. So I started blogging in 2006, and kind of taking a contrarian view. That's who was in the market, the contrarians that wanted a unfair advantage in the marketplace. There weren't people coming and asking for this, obviously. So we really had to create it through content. So I started blogging in 2006. I wrote a book in 2012. And just have been blogging ever since. That turned out to be helpful because, now all of our clients come through, searches and hitting articles that I've written over the last however many years it's been. Has it been 14 years? Wow.
That's an early time to start a blog. What led you to that idea?
I was already blogging, both to my benefit and my detriment. When I was looking for work in the early 2000s, I had an interview, I think it was with Dell, a computer company. And the guy got on the phone. The first thing he says, so, I've been reading your blog. And I said, oh, yeah, what do you think? He says, well, you're pretty hard on corporate marketing. And I'm like, yeah, it needs to be different. He said, that's what we do here. That's what we're hiring for. And I was like, oh, well, probably not a good fit. What do you want to talk about?
So this was a personal blog, or what was this about?
It was a personal professional blog, but yeah, mostly it was customer chaos is what I called it.
And you started that just for fun, or what was the goal with that?
Yeah,
one?
Just to get some of these ideas out. After going through and building the websites of 3 or 4 companies, and then I build it, and it's like, okay. They're like, just put quarters in the machine now. I'm like, no, let's go build something else. So I'm not a very good employee, as it turns out. But I was frustrated. I was like, why aren't we doing more of these things? More personal email, like focus on lead conversion, start the conversation with what eventually became things like lead magnets, get content to drive people. Imagine there were some blueprints and stuff, but really most of the conversion oriented know-how was in the direct marketing. I even had one of my first presentations was things you can learn from the bad boys of internet marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And, Barry Belcher was doing his thing with supplements, and getting into trouble. Lots of people were getting into trouble because they were using all these psychological tricks to get people to buy things that were of dubious value. And
Urgency, dark
yeah,
patterns, all that stuff.
yeah, and I think Perry saw it as a game, and he had a lesson to learn there.
I do feel like that stuff was cutting edge, though, and like we took a lot of the ethical or at least morally ambiguous stuff and applied it in the right direction. And I think probably a lot of CRO tactics came from that world.
Yeah, it was. They took it from the direct response mail marketers, the Schwartzes and of the world, who were, fantastic copywriters and knew how to get you into a story, tell the story, provide logical and emotional support points, and then a little bit of scarcity that you're going to miss out, sort of a thing to kind of push them across the finish line. It's still works today.
So there's this idea, there's this high level concept I kind of want to talk to you about, and it's probably like a well-worn conversation, so forgive me here. But there's this question of like, what is CRO, or how do you conceptualize CRO? Because I've heard different definitions. I know we've talked about this on multiple forums and conferences, whether we should change the term or not. But at this point in time, like, what do you look at as encompassing the art and science of conversion rate optimization? What is it?
I see it as two things, and we address one. So the first thing, the denominator of a conversion rate is the people coming. So the first piece of it is getting quality traffic, finding out where those people are that are in your tribe for your product or service, and the right words to get them to come visit the site. So that's the bottom of the conversion rate equation. The top is how many people convert. And I really, I see everything in the world of behavioral science in that. So what assumptions are our brains making? These 3-pound seething cauldrons of biases and effects and beliefs and stereotypes. What are they making up when they come to a site like that? And, the best data we can get is watching people try to solve the problem they're trying to solve and learning something from it. So I these days, I probably use behavioral science and conversion optimization interchangeably. Any decision you have to make, the first question is, do we have data on that? If we don't have data, can we go create some data that would help me make a decision on what copy to use, what layout I should be using, et cetera?
So there's kind of a mixing between kind of data and behavioral change. And I like that framing. There's also, I feel like in CRO, there's multiple arms that make up this broad practice. There's, the copywriting arm, which I think you alluded to. I think that was part of the what was the academy? The Wizard Academy?
The Wizard Academy, yeah.
Yeah. So did they write the book, The Wizard of Ads? Was that?
Yes, that was Roy H. Williams.
Yeah. So I read that, and that was a phenomenal book on copywriting. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that's a very strong arm of the CRO practice. I also feel like there's an analytics arm, the measurement community. There's experiment design, the people who really geek out on statistics and t-tests and there's books written about this stuff.
Yep.
Front-end development, right? Like that's a core piece of this too. User experience. And then there's the psychology. Is there a particular arm of that you gravitate towards to, or maybe when you started out gravitated towards?
So my journey kind of looks like this. So when someone comes to us and they have the first line of conversion is you have a product that people want to buy at a price they can afford to pay for it, and that it works. So that you're building brand value with every customer. The next level is, are you communicating the value proposition? Are you communicating that product well? So that's copywriting and images. I throw images in with copy because they're just so underutilized in terms of aiding copy. But do you have that messaging platform that gets people to try it for the first time and delivers on what they're going to experience when they buy it? And then beyond that, it is can be big things like, we're going to introduce scarcity. We're going to introduce strategies like abandoned cart or abandoned site strategies that are kind of a combination of changes to messaging and user interaction. They're more strategies, I guess you would say. And then you take each piece of those would ostensibly end up looking like funnels and say, can we improve that? Can we make the emails bring more people, or bring people that are buying? Can we get people to buy a little something to separate the tire kickers from the people who are actually going to spend money with us? So that's kind of the structure I have on it. Interestingly enough, for me, the copy proves to be one of the most difficult things to attach data to. It is so organic. There's so many different ways to communicate something that and also copy is hard. I mean, I can recognize when copy isn't achieving that level of communicating your value proposition, and I will have ideas for what we should try in terms of changing that messaging. But someone who could go in and create a headline and a subhead that makes you have to read the first paragraph, and then a first paragraph that at least gets you to scan it, and then a layout on that copy that when you scan it, you get what it's about and know which section you want to drill in on, and then delivers the rational stuff that makes you think that's why you made the choice when you've already been convinced by the more emotional reasons that are presented in the copy. That's hard. People ask me for references for copy all the time, and I know some of the direct marketing guys who are very expensive and have their books full for 6 months out, but most copywriters are writing for the owner of the website, not for the owner, not for the end clients. And I think that's why copy, even though it's probably the most important thing to optimize, doesn't get optimized as much, is because it's so hard.
Hard and subjective. I feel like there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen in these situations.
Yeah.
You've got product marketing, you've got web strategy, you've got so many different departments that want to put their say in this. And sometimes I think when you have all those people polling, you often get this bland copy that you see on at least B2B websites.
So it's sometimes styrofoam copy.
Styrofoam copy?
Mm-hmm.
What's that mean? It's
just tasteless, chewy, but very, very white and bland and unedible.
Yeah, I like that. So actually, that's kind of why I asked what area you gravitate towards, because you've got the background in computer science and you wear the lab coat, but I've always found that you have a very interesting and peculiar way of stringing words together. Like when I used to reach out to you for quotes. Yes, totally. I can't remember how you said it, but I asked you once about like the traits of an optimizer, and I think you described them as like a beekeeper mixed with like a sandcastle builder or something like that. I always wonder. Like me. Yeah, I wonder where that ability comes from, because that seems like artistry to me. And then there's the scientific side, of course, which is the measurement, the behavioral side. But it seems like you do pull a lot from this creative, the Wizard of Ads style, like weaving a story and weaving interesting like words together. Is that true, or how do you feel?
I think that's where a lot of that comes from. Roy does this exercise where he has 5 people line up on this side of the room and 5 people line up on this side of the room, and he has 5 people on this side of the room come up with a noun, and the 5 people on this side of the room, this is a class of entrepreneurs, have a business, and he will write a persuasive, essentially radio ad, because that's where he cut his chops, that uses this random thing with their product. So it might be like snails and accounting services, and he will just live. And his goal is not to show off. His goal is to demonstrate that you can take almost anything that's unusual that will make the brain wake up and go, wait a minute, I need to see what's going on here, and make that work. I mean, after writing blogs since 2005, you just get tired of hearing yourself blather on about you should, you must. And that's why I've done 2 podcasts, just a couple seasons. I'm not continuing to do it. We shut down the last one at the beginning of the pandemic, but I love that medium because you can create these intros and have all kinds of fun with it. So yeah, writing a lot helps you do that, and you eventually get tired of hearing yourself say the same thing. And if you're getting a put into a listicle, you've really got to work pretty hard to not sound like everybody else.
Yeah, there's something playful to it as well, playful and innovative. So this goes back to the initial question I asked around your role at Conversion Sciences. Have you heard of this book called Rocket Fuel?
I've heard of it. I have not read it.
So it talks about like the kind of co-founder relationship that you need to have and like which kind of roles you need to run a successful company.
Mm,
And it's one of those persona archetype things where maybe it's somewhat true, but there's probably nuance within it. But this book talks about the innovator. I believe that's the word, or they might use the term visionary, which sounds kind of goofy. And then there's like the integrator or operator.
mm-hmm.
So would you categorize yourself as someone who thinks 0 to 1? You don't have to call yourself a visionary if you don't want to, but like it sounds like you're pretty interested in coming up with net new ideas, shaking up the right brain, thinking through, what's next. Like you're looking at kind of the future of things.
Yep. And when I'm mentoring entrepreneurs, one of the first things I say is you need to find your other, because conversion science is, first of all, we were trying to create a market. So there was not a lot of growth between 2007 and 2010. And then in 2011, my partner Joel came on, and he is that. Why are we doing this? Because it's part of the process.
The integrator, the operator.
Yes, the guy who has a financial spreadsheet of his own, apart from the bookkeeper, because he's watching everything. He's, every week he's like, all right, we've got a cliff coming up in 3 months. I'm like, in 3 months? We could all be dead in 3 months. Just a fantastic partner. I got lucky. It wasn't like I went out and did a selection process. I just got lucky that he had hired me at a couple of companies he had worked at, and then got, burnt out at the one he was at. And I'm like, I had this hot lead. I said, let's do this. If we close this, it'll fund you coming in and being part of the company. And so he said, let's get on an airplane and go close them. I was like, you can do that? He says, yeah. So we did that. And that was the biggest client we closed, and it funded the whole thing. So that's probably more story than you wanted. But yes, you need to first of all know yourself. So you start off with your Myers-Briggs profile, which has a lot of data behind it.
What's your Myers-Briggs profile?
I am a ENFP.
I think that's mine too. It's either ENFP or ENFT. I can't remember.
I used to be an ENTP probably. Entrepreneurs tend to favor the ENTP. And I won't go into what those means. Just go get your Myers-Briggs. I used to be an ENTP. I'm a little bit more of an ENFP now, kind of borderline there. Thinking versus feeling.
Right. And I think they can change around through time and like through certain circumstances, but it's like those core traits seem to like enable this innovative, creative thinking.
Yeah. But do growth, a Strengths Finder, do a Colby Index, which is how you behave in action. Very interesting profile there. Have your astrology chart done, but you need to get an idea of what you are about and what you think you're about. Beautiful of like astrology charts is you're going to project onto them you're only going to listen to the parts that match what you believe, but it's going to heighten attention on what you believe. Get to know yourself, and then find someone who is different. Like I said, I got lucky in finding somebody who's very different from me, but also had a very similar entrepreneurial temperament as me, and
similar goals, principles, values, kind of like the underlying structure there.
And that person could be an employee, it can be a partner, but it needs to be somebody that has influence on how you're running your business.
So do you guys explicitly divvy up your tasks and responsibilities and roles based on those strengths, or is that something that comes naturally and organically? Like, do y'all talk about this and revisit it, or how does that relationship work?
We've never split things up like that. So when you have the right mix, the things I naturally gravitate to are the things I do. So I gravitate towards messaging and, for the business, doing all the content. I'm out doing most of the speaking. Speaking, it turns out, is really important to us, but we never leave a show with a project. It's 18 to 24 months later that after someone's seen us speak, we get these really amazing clients because we've been a mind worm, some sort of a virus in their heads, and it takes it.
They see you on stage in a lab coat. I mean, what could speak more to authority than this?
What? Yes. Well, and that's why I wear it. I'm sure you've heard the science behind it.
Right. Totally. Well, so it sounds like
But
there's a couple of things like that that are long term that you've kind of set in stone. Like for you in particular, like you wrote the book, you were doing the blog very early. You're doing speaking. These are sort of long term marketing initiatives that would enable. I don't know if Joel is the primary salesperson, but it sounds like you're really
I'm the primary salesperson. He's a great salesperson too,
okay.
though. So if we've got an abundance of opportunities, he can step in and he enjoys it. We both are on the calls for exciting opportunities. So, but we're
Gotcha.
also both we ride shotgun on. One of us is on shotgun on every client, so that there's this kind of strategic backing. While we've got these amazing conversion scientists that handle all the details in the day to day, it works really well. But for him and I, he just gravitates to the things I don't want to do, and I gravitate to the things he doesn't want to do, and it just has kind of worked out.
It sounds
And
pretty natural. I'm curious with some of these initiatives because it sounds like there wasn't a lot of data to inform you on some of these. Maybe they were a little bit more intuitive, right? So starting the blog in 2006, 2007, starting speaking. Why did you start speaking? Like what hypothesis did you have, or like what value did you think you were going to get from that?
those fall more into callings. So I actually started
Mm.
the business so that I could write and speak more. Um, Literally, I was like, all right, I'm starting this business, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to speak somewhere, either on a webinar or at a conference every month this year. I had to throw my own event the first time, but I would pay the airfare and the lodging for the opportunity to be on stage for 30 minutes. Wasn't requiring any pay, and I was able to do it. And after that, because I was really diligent about it, and I've got a bit of the gift of gab, right? So uh, opportunities started opening up, started getting invitations, and then I was able to start charging. But mostly we speak for promotional purposes. We don't see that as a significant income. So that's the way I did it, and that's my calling. So I'm I'm a teacher at heart, so I'm going to be happiest when I'm writing, when I'm speaking, doing those sorts of things. And there's no better experience than being on a call with a client and saying, "We just finished this test," or "I just went into your data and I found this thing that is going to fundamentally change your business." That's just like, yeah.
So you wanted to go into business to write and speak.
That was
What
the original. That was the original
what drew you to those areas?
writing and speaking.
Yeah.
It's just I guess I like attention. I like doing tasks that are performative.
Hmm.
I like doing something that I'm going to be able to show off to somebody. So being in front of people, writing the blog. The thing is, the blog, there was 10 of us on the blog for the first 2 or 3 years. 10 readers a month, something like that, and I was still doing it because I just had to get it out of me. So at the core of our businesses, there's going to be that thing that is your thing that you're going to do no matter what. And the challenge is to turn it into a business. And, usually finding the other is the way for them to go, "Oh, I love all this stuff you're stirring up now. Let me go turn this into product and services and monetize it."
Did you have a model in mind when you were drawn towards writing and speaking? Like, did you have somebody you were chasing, or at least thought like, "Hey, this person can do this. Like, I see the path there," or was it just totally? I don't want to say a random calling, but like, I feel like there's probably somebody you look towards who is at least doing speaking for a living. Did you have that for you?
I think the model that most appeals to me is, and I think the reason that we keep conversion sciences small is Seth Godin. So
Mm.
here's a guy that spent a lot of time doing marketing, doing something innovative, got practice writing. He's been blogging every day for, I don't know, 2 decades or something like that. And he does these crazy experiments. If he gets an idea, he'll launch a book, he'll give it away, he'll do, the crazy books. He's doing training now. So he has a small team of people around him that are executing. He's carrying the ideas. He's bringing the message out to people. And yeah, that's kind of the way I want to do it. The flip side is that I still really enjoy getting into the client's data and doing that work as well. So I'm not quite as loose as he is to go off and be the idea guy and the writer guy only.
Yeah, well, there's something very interesting about Seth Godin in that he seems to be one of these not select few, but he's definitely like a role model when it comes to carving out the life that he clearly wants to live. There's a couples out there like that. Like I look at Malcolm Gladwell, for instance. That dude walks down a supermarket aisle and just, has this question pop in his head. Why are there a million brands of mustard and only one brand of ketchup? And then he goes back and researches and interviews people and like goes down this curiosity rabbit hole. I'm like, I feel like that's what he would do if he wasn't paid for it. Same thing with his podcast. He's just a curious guy and he gets to live his whole life that way. Yeah. Similarly, I saw a role model like that for myself when I was in college, in Ryan Holiday and potentially like Tim Ferriss too, where they were writers, speakers, thinkers, but they also had their business side. I'm like, man, it would be cool to like model my life like that. But I think so. You and I are gravitating towards similar types of personas or similar types of lifestyles. And you also mentioned before that you weren't a good employee. So it sounds like there's something in you that definitely wants to carve your path out and create your own universe, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to take the contrarian view, which means that I have to argue with authority. I don't take instruction well, but I collaborate amazing. So, conversion sciences is very flat, and the employees we have, I'm like grateful because they're so much better at what they do than I ever would have been. And, I talked about my partner, Joel, and I got off on a sidetrack there, but we were going down that. Where were we going with that?
Well, we were going to talk about your contrarianism. So
the authority. I think I made that point. I don't do authority very well.
Let's do a contrarian thing then. So is there anything about conversion rate optimization that you believe about CRO that most people would disagree with you on?
I honestly think that my calling right now is to destroy the way websites are designed right now. This whole idea of creative agencies getting design deals based on what they've done for other people, but they're not doing user research. They're not doing A/B testing. They're not even looking at the analytics on the existing site. We get brought in to do that for some of these big agencies. That just needs to go away. No, marketers should never have to take the agency's word for it. And the core message in all of my presentations is, when your design team or your agency comes to you and says, which of these designs do you want? You say, I don't know. Go get me some data that would tell me which one of these to pick, because it's there. It's there with an afternoon's work. So if this is my contrarian high horse right now.
It honestly shocks me that that's still so common. The whole multi-year or multi-month, at least, redesign with no data, tons of money going into a consulting firm or an agency.
It's not the agency's fault. They've been trained to do that. Totally. The guy that writes their check is going to hire them again if they deliver something that pleases him. Mm-hmm. And, it's a whole rabbit hole they have to go down if they're going to start showing data that shows he's wrong. So it's not that they're incompetent. The industry just needs to change. There needs to be more of these executives that are the Barksdale quote of, if there's a data, let's look at the data. If there's not, let's go with my opinion.
And that's, I think, maybe my contrarian opinion. It has to do with data, in that I think most companies fundamentally misuse or misunderstand data. From the kitchen side of a lot of these companies that I see, like, I guess some companies have a proper setup. I think if you have a pretty simple website with purchases, e-commerce style, you can get most of the data. But I've seen so many broken setups where it's like, even if you're a data-driven, quote unquote, company, it's like you're driven by poor data. So it's like the decisions you're making are probably not what you think they are, or they're not of the validity and precision that you think they are. So then my contrarian opinion is probably that in CRO, I think most effort on A/B tests is actually wasted. Because like you're either, underpowered or running them on poor things, which me and Pep have talked about quite a bit, the stupid button color tests.
Well, and but so many decisions on what to test happen in a brainstorm. And at the end of the meeting, somebody says, okay, well, this idea seemed like the one most people liked, so that's what we'll test next, which is just a terrible way to choose what to test. It's a great way to generate hypotheses, but terrible way to test. So I agree with you.
It seems like half the battle in this space then. I mean, part of it is attracting people and part of it is converting in a similar way that you would any funnel, any type of services business. Part of it is almost like this challenger sale model of like educating and pushing back and being almost antagonistic towards the status quo.
The I started doing a new presentation called the hero's journey, optimizing for your hero's journeys. And I flip it almost immediately and I say, well, if your visitor's the hero in the hero story, what is the brand? Well, the brand has to be the villain. The brand has to get that hero across the threshold into the new world through the trials. And I use examples of the trials that a typical website will put in front of people into the belly of the whale, where they've basically decided they're going to move forward and be transformed through resurrection from a prospect to a customer. And it's very contrarian, but it's been getting a lot of feedback, more than my usual. Here's how you do optimization.
Have you explicitly looked into learning about narrative structure or storytelling? Because that sounds pretty sophisticated for the average presentation.
Yeah, it's the way we should be running copy. If I had my druthers, if it was like, Brian, we don't need you anymore, you need to go build the next thing, I would start copy sciences, and it would be all about how we create these narratives for brands, but apply data to do those. And our buddy Pep, you mentioned him, he's got Winter now, so the tools are coming, even in the B2B space, that we can start really exercising this copy with qualified audiences. So I think AI is going to make all of this so much easier.
Well, I have a million questions now. So the AI thing actually leads to an interesting question. I always ask my team like which questions they want me to ask who I'm speaking to. And one question that was brought up by our content growth marketer was on your website, you talk about AI optimization, like the future facing, what's coming next. Like, I think you say in the copy, the future, this isn't the future, this is the now. So, I mean, I remember you being one of the first agencies that started doing the AI, the evolutionary algorithms and all of that stuff. So the question there was, how do you come up with these ideas? How do you know what's next in CRO? Like, how do you look towards this and say, all right, this is what I'm going to invest in? Because that's a pretty critical business decision. Like, what's the thought process behind something like that?
It is, I make the decision about calling what the future is based on what I have access to and can make money on. So there is a little bit of that. So, the AI side of things, Neil Isko here in Austin developed this amazing evolutionary algorithm, which essentially allows you to do multivariate testing with much less traffic. It uses an AI to prune branches, so you don't have to test everything in the space when you're doing multivariate testing. And I was really excited about that. And in retrospect, I should have either partnered or bought him at the time. But that technology ended up getting bought by Evolve or Ascend, and then Ascend got bought by a company called Evolve, or it got I think it got rebranded to Evolve. And so now that's $30,000 a month, and a million page views a month minimum to use it. But that was, at that time, I was getting really excited because while they had pruned the traffic, they could also find all of the local maxima in the space and deliver the right traffic to each one using the AI. And suddenly I was like, personalization will now happen. That and some other things that I saw, I was like, yeah, this could really happen. AI is happening in our tools. We're not really seeing it, but Session Cam has the Suffer Score, which is an AI measure of how people are acting on screen from recorded sessions. And you can go and look at the ones where people seem to be rage clicking and stuff. If you're getting 1,000 form feedbacks a day, something like Watson can go in and help you understand sentiment, pull out the most important issues that you really need to look at, because you're not going to be able to read 1,000, comments a day. So things like that, where AI is just making our tools better, is what we're going to see mostly. But eventually, we're going to be able to drop our ideas into a blender, and it's going to not only figure out what combinations work, but which combinations work for each of the different segments, which it's already figured out for you. And personalization really is going to like take off.
Yeah, we've got a ton of stuff like that going on the content side as well. Stuff like ClearScope that reverse engineers what it takes to rank a piece of content. Surfer SEO, same thing. And then maybe the biggest one would be Jarvis.ai, which is also here in Austin, which helps you actually physically write the copy, right? So it's going to be an AI copywriting generator. And it's actually genuinely really good and impressive. So I feel like we're still nascent, but just seeing that magic, seeing that aha moment makes me believe that there's some future potential for stuff like this.
And is it A/B tested amazing? I mean, is it copy deliver higher conversion rates?
We don't know about higher conversion rates. I think you would still probably need to pump that through something like Evolve or Conductrix or your tool of choice. But in terms of the actual effort it takes to get a piece of copy done, especially long form, right? Like blog posts, you and I both know how long those take. You have the idea in your brain, you have the narrative structure in mind, and just simply putting the words down on paper takes a long time, especially when it's a blank page. So I think it can help shorten that time from like blank page to first draft, and then everything else is, you still have to have your editorial and your human side. But it's like if you can shorten that time from 5 hours to 1 hour, that's a massive time saving, especially at scale, and especially if you have a big team using this stuff.
Yeah. Well, if you're that sort of a business owner where you are on the operations side of things, that can be like almost like an inexpensive employee. Those of us that kind of start there, that's where our interest lies, you're going to have a hard time wrestling what we do out of our fingers and giving it to an AI. So I think it depends really on where you're coming from.
Yeah, I don't know if the copywriters are super pleased about this, but are you proactive about looking for this technology? Are you the type that goes on Product Hunt daily, Hacker News, or are you more reactive and when you see it?
I'm more reactive, much more reactive.
And you're in the right communities. You go to the conferences, you talk on the webinars, you're in the mix. You get a lot of serendipitous opportunities to look at this new stuff.
Yeah. There's a part of my personality that sometimes avoid hearing other people's opinions because I like creating from whole cloth. So I have trouble remembering who I should attribute for ideas that aren't my own. So I try to
get it.
I somewhat stay in my own little bubble, but I go from specific to general. So something happens with a client, and I'm like, oh wait, this implies this whole other thing, and that becomes something to write about.
Is there anything that you've changed your mind about CRO recently that you used to believe you no longer believe, or shifted gears on?
That's a good question, and I'm loath to talk about the mistakes, the hard lessons that were learned. I think the elephant in the room with CRO is how you use A/B testing data, and when you use it to decide that you're going to fundamentally change the way you do business, and when you're going to use it to really understand what your visitors' tendencies are. And I think A/B testing is still our favorite data because it's controlled and it's reliable. We don't know for how long it's reliable. Should we be retesting, things in the last half of every year that we tested in the first half of the year? And, questions like that. So I think for us, and I'll divulge this as well. Since we've added design to our like good design, quality, well done design, our clients are so much more pleased just because the designs are more pleasing. A lot of the times the fancy designs don't test as well, and we work backwards on that, but they just humans love beauty. And so while I'm raging against creative agencies, I also realize that humans just love beauty, and that's got to be a part of it. And it's something that's over the only last couple of years is relatively new. So I think I used to always defend myself by saying ugly wins too much for us to worry about what the design looks like. But you know what? In a client relationship, and I think when your relationship with your end customers who are coming to the website, beauty has its place.
I love that. Yeah, I would say that in my mind, it has shifted much more towards the artistic as well. Like I used to be like a statistical purist with regards to A/B testing. One thing that I've realized is one must be much more pragmatic to work in the business world. Not everything is the way the blog posts make it seem, and not everything's the way the textbooks make it seem. But then the other side is like all of the logical, statistical left brain stuff. Well, it has its place. I've been reading much more about like The Wizard of Ads, right? Or Alchemy from Rory Sutherland, and realizing that a lot of what's actually really interesting in terms of like step change functions and not just little micro optimizations comes from these irrational art and poetry inspired ideas. So that's definitely been a whole field of literature that I've been reading up on recently as well.
I can't argue with any of that. We'll go through this data, and even I think an AI renaissance, and a lot of us will come back to where we were in 2007 in a lot of ways, and that's just the way the human animal works.
Time is a flat circle, as they say.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about the blog. Do y'all apply CRO processes to your own blog or clients' blogs? Do you work on content CRO?
We really don't. No. And I mean, we do it on a strategy basis for our clients. So we are always, one of our first questions is, oh, you're getting a lot of organic traffic. We know that traffic is going to be coming to your articles or your blog. Let's see how big the segment of people who would potentially be interested in your product are. And, the blog post can be all over the map.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll almost always test an ad or exit intent overlay, at least a dripping pan, an ad at the bottom of the content to see if we can.
Sorry, what's a dripping pan?
Dripping pan is an offer at the bottom of a page. So if somebody reads to the bottom of the page, they're probably interested, and if it's on your website, it should be relevant. So always give them an offer to take some sort of action at the bottom, and we call that a dripping pan for drippings of attention or something like that.
I like that. This would be some sort of lead magnet or ebook or some sort of like value additive content based offer, or
could be on any of those things, right? Mm-hmm. We're usually testing some sort of an initial lead magnet to see if we can start a funnel off of the blog, if there's a big enough audience, and it's usually 50-50 as to whether we can find an offer that would get enough people onto the list to justify going through and creating the email series that would bring them back to the site.
So in that case, right, like you're kind of stress testing whether there's even any intent, right? You're testing a couple different offers, and in some cases they're just not going to convert. In which case, there's probably the insight that I would take from that because I bridge the gap in terms of content and CRO. Like I would say, all right, the content team needs to be writing about different things. So then like the SEO, which keywords you're going after need to fundamentally change. And then if it does work, then you can start optimization. And that's when the CRO process kicks in.
Right.
Now, in the event that you stress test it and there's no conversions, you can't find anything that works. Are you going to work with the SEO and content team, or basically just say, hey, not us. You need to write about different things. Essentially, like these visitors are not coming in high intent, so you're attracting potentially the wrong audience. Like, what do you do in that scenario?
So we typically back away. So, our strategy is to come up with strategic ideas and then test enough into them that we can say, okay, this is something you should invest in. Because the strategic ideas are usually require investment, the higher effort hypotheses, but they potentially could open up whole new channels. Like a blog could. If there's a good audience of people who'd be interested in the products, then it's a no-brainer to light that up and create a funnel around it. So, but if generally if we can't prove that it's worth investing in, we move on to the next thing. So no, we really don't. So if I was running copy science, we might though.
Right, exactly. If it is worth investing in, then what's the process? Is it similar to the process that you would use on an e-commerce website? It sounds like you're building more of a time-based funnel that kind of escalates in value versus, somebody coming to a website just to buy shoes, and in which case maybe there's a different approach. But I don't know. You tell me, like what happens when you do find during that stress test that people can and do convert to some of these offers?
Then we'll say we're gonna prioritize ideas around what the autoresponder and the follow-up emails look like to get people back to the site. It's really we're looking for, especially in the first 6 months of engagement with the client, we're looking for those things that are going to demonstrate that we can generate the revenue that makes it worth paying our fees. And so we're always looking for either those channels where conversion's really low, there's an opportunity there, but often more where the conversion rate is high, to optimize those. And of course, usually the highest conversion rates come from return visitors. So we can improve their experience, or we can get more return visitors, which is exactly what a funnel does. So that's kind of the way we look at it, is we're looking for opportunities where we define conversion optimization as getting the most value from every visitor that you can. So it may not just be the sale. We may be able to get them on a list and then bring them back later. And we can value those things to dollars. So yeah, we're trying to get more value from them. And sometimes the funnel is the way to do it. But we are not, to answer your question, we're not typically diving in and saying, all right, now we're going to help you with your content strategy. And I think for some of the same reasons that we don't do traffic shape. So we don't do ads, we don't do SEO, we don't do anything with that bottom part of the funnel. We really do focus on, the bottom part of the equation. We focus on the numerator.
Yeah, that makes sense. In terms of an agency, like I know this with scope creep, right? Like then you would need to hire different people and totally change your value proposition. So that makes total sense to me in terms of the services. One thing that I want to call out, and tell me if this is wrong in any way, but like this initial stress test, finding out whether people can convert in any way, I think is really important. I know at HubSpot, I worked on content optimization quite a bit, and I would look at the data, and my typical heuristic for your average e-commerce website would be to find the pages with the highest traffic with the lowest conversion rate and focus on those, because those would be the lowest hanging fruit. But what I found with content was quite different, because it was pretty binary in terms of like what people's intent was. So I don't know what word this would be, maybe conversion potential, but I found often my time was best spent if I looked at the top 20 converting pages and just tried to convert them a little bit higher, versus trying to find that page, that content post with like 20,000 visits a month with a 0.001 conversion rate. Because it turns out people that were coming to that page were probably just coming for a quick answer, and there's no amount of optimization that could potentially turn them around or them back.
Yep.
Whereas like if people are coming in on a blog post that's like, best live chat software or best creatine supplements, it's like they're coming to search for a product type, and you could potentially, there's more conversion potential there. And I think it's really interesting how you frame that in the first place, so you don't waste your effort on pages that are frankly never going to convert. Yeah,
that makes perfect sense to me. We will either choose, the top, 10, 20, it depends on, we just want to be able to get enough traffic that we think we'll get the conversions when we're testing out that strategy. But there's nothing wrong with that strategy at all. It's getting enough of a sample size that you're going to get a valid A/B test out of it, which is typically what we use.
Yeah. Switching up a little bit, but keeping the topic of blogging, you said the majority of your clients come from inbound from your blog posts?
They come, from organic.
Are you experimenting with new channels, or have you experimented with new channels for client acquisition?
Yeah, like I said, we experimented a couple of times with podcasts. The first podcast I did, I was just reading my blog posts into the podcast, so it was pretty easy to do. We launched in 2018 through 2020. We did an interview style podcast like we're on right now. The problem with podcasts is I can't get access to data that tells me how it's doing.
Attribution.
There's no attribution. The download numbers are all over the place, and so I really couldn't manage it as a channel. I loved doing it. It was very time consuming, so it was a fairly expensive channel. But I had no way of going to my operations partner and saying, yes, we need to keep doing this because I'm having fun. So that was a problem.
The same thing. Yeah.
We do paid ads, a small spend of paid ads, a couple thousand a month. I think that's another area where we're seeing this 2020 being the year of conversion. We're having much better luck with that. So, but beyond that, we've dabbled with social media. The fastest organic growth we ever did was when we were doing a blog post a day, 5 days a week, which was 2013, 2014 timeframe. Amazing growth. So I don't know if it's still the case, but quantity was clearly was definitely the issue there. And other than that, we're still the primary marketing channels are email and speaking.
If you had to redo it all and you didn't have the assets that you currently have, if you didn't have the blog, if you didn't have the book, if you were starting over from scratch, would you do it the same or would you choose different channels? Just a high level thought exercise here.
If I was doing it again in today's environment, or if it was I didn't have much choice in the old environment. If I was doing it today, the blog is important for you to get your head around what you believe and what float balloons for ideas that you have. So I would absolutely start with blogging. It's what I enjoy doing. It's something that I will do. So it's keep it out of the hands of the SEOs because they take all the fun out of writing.
Oh my God, tell me about it. Even since running this agency, I now, when I'm writing for my own blog, I never used to look at SEO keywords. I never used to do ClearScope or anything. And now I think in those terms. So it's almost like I have to reinvigorate the creative love of just writing ideas for my own sake sometimes. But I think back to the point on would you do this again? It seems like there's some inherent value in blogging for an agency or for B2B in general, because what you're doing is you're showcasing your expertise in a way that's also a distribution channel. Unlike ads where you're more just gaining attention and maybe like you have enough expertise and social proof and whatever on the page on the website. But through reading a blog post, you sort of show somebody what to do if you're teaching them about something, but then you also show that you're capable of doing this, which I think is an implicitly strong sign if somebody were looking to hire for it.
Well, teaching is a great brand experience. One of my favorite reason for applying data to your marketing department or your business is this. It's a safety net for creativity. We got into communications. Most marketers got into communications because they want that experience of changing hearts and minds. We tend to have to play it safe. We're halfway through the year. We're behind in the number of leads we're supposed to be generating. So we do safe campaigns. But when you have data, you can resurrect those crazy ideas, and there's a way to put them in front of an audience and see if it potentially could fundamentally change the way you go to market, fundamentally change the way you present your value proposition. That's the most exciting thing to me. So as data becomes cheaper and easier to use, as it is every year, we should be getting more creative. We should be getting more interesting because we've tried these ideas that we just consume us over the weekend. And then on Monday, we're like, I could never sell this. I'm not going to bring this up to anybody. That's the most exciting thing about data. We should be getting more creative and more interesting.
That's cool. That's the way I've always described A/B testing is there's nothing magic about it. It's a research technology. It's a research methodology. But what it inherently does is it enables uncapped creativity and innovation, and it caps the downside of that. So basically, if you were to just throw any idea out there, there would be this inherent risk or this inherent pushback because, well, what if it doesn't work? Well, in the case of A/B testing, you've got about 2 to 4 weeks where it doesn't work, and then you can just revert back. So, right, like you're capping the downside, and that encourages the safety net, the psychological safety of trying wild, crazy shit.
Yeah. And there's an interesting study that was done that I think illustrates it for me. If you put children in a big field in the back of a farm and it's wide open, they're going to tend to cluster close to each other for safety. If you put a fence up around them, though, they tend to explore out to the fences. And I think data creates that kind of area. It helps you narrow down the options that you have so you can really create out to the edges of what is proving to work.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really cool study. So every time I talk to you, I feel like you give me a good recommendation for a new skill. Like you gave me that book recommendation, the speaking one. I can't remember what it's called now.
Probably Michael Port's Steal the Show.
100%, that one. And I feel like you're always upskilling yourself. You're always like pushing yourself on something. Are you actively focused on learning new skills right now? What's on the personal productivity agenda for Brian Massey?
No, for me, it has really been that question about knowing myself. So, I'm a little older than you. I'm starting this magical period called the second half of life, where you look back and you say, I followed all the rules. I did everything I was supposed to do. I'm not there yet. This is not it. What am I missing? What am I missing? So for me, it's really been a personal journey, and it's everything from um, meditating to uh, just really understanding some of the things. There's a lot of research around how we are shaping our world using strategies that kept us safe when we were a child. So attachment theory is very interesting to me. Complex PTSD, where we're using strategies in our lives that just don't work for us as adults anymore. And so the last half of life is about letting go of those things and taking some different kinds of risks. So that's been my thing. I don't know if that's what you were looking for, but
it doesn't matter if I was looking for it. We found it. I'm on this similar, I guess, reading and learning trajectory. So I'm curious if you have any like book recommendations or anything that you've read that's particularly interesting in this area of know thyself.
Oh my gosh, it's so well, it's a very personal question, but there's a book on complex PTSD that talks about what our strategies are when we're healthy and not healthy. Our flight, fight, freeze or fawn strategies, and you start to see yourselves in some of these stories. There are a number of books on that are a little bit closer to poetry in terms of the soul, and I've been reading a lot of Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey, so that kind of influenced my villain's journey presentation. And I like that I have the freedom to kind of bring some of these things into business, because we're talking about human issues here. Just as I was saying, data should help increase our creativity. Ultimately, communication is all about human issues and those sorts of things. So I'm thinking that it's going to make me a better writer. I can apply that to a business as being a better copywriter, or at least knowing how to identify the right copywriters for what we're doing. So, it's really been a conglomeration of them. I don't think any one has really stood out to me. I would start with attachment theory. Probably, there was this interesting book. I hate to recommend it because the title is I forgot the name of the book, but that title is a hashtag. And I'm like, am I really going to read a book? The title is a hashtag. And I'm going to have to get back to you on what the title was. I'm sorry.
No, that's totally fine. Attachment theory is fascinating. And I really liked what you said about business problems kind of being human problems. And that reminds me of two things. So one, I think Tucker Max said that. I don't know if it was a tweet or like an email, but I remember him saying something about how they run it, Book in the Box or Scribe Media. He said, look, all these business problems, they're business or human problems masked as business problems, right? So that's at the core, especially when it comes to leadership and kind of the soft skills and communication and working together. But that also alludes to, I read a book earlier this year that was kind of like half journal prompts, which is powerful.
Interesting.
Called Reboot. And it's a book for leaders. It's like a leadership book, but it's not really. It's really a psychology book. So you go through and you start like probing yourself at this deep level, especially through the journal prompts. And they actually run, it's by Jerry Colonna, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but they run a company called Reboot.io. And I won't throw her under the bus, but a friend of mine is using one of their coaches. And she's like, dude, it's therapy. Like I'm talking about my relationship with my parents, and like, it's ridiculous. And it's so helpful. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are coming to this realization, at least among my friend group. A lot of us have talked about this the last couple of years. So it's pretty interesting.
It's very interesting. And that is definitely a theme here in Austin. I think maybe Austin might become an epicenter of health and mental health oriented entrepreneurs. My friend Tina Schweiger is launching Mindful Appy, which you send an emoji in, and suddenly leaders will begin to understand what the sense of the sentiment of the team is, and who's going through trouble and stuff like that, or is his leadership resulting in everybody being satisfied and productive? It's he or she, by the way. I think that is the next thing, because it's not just the second half of life anymore. These younger generations are just curious as hell. It's awesome.
Well, you start to think sometimes, especially during the pandemic, I would say it's like, yeah, I could get technically better at all this stuff, but it's like, what's it all for? And like, I also want to enjoy the rest of my life. And also like a lot of business, like the technical side is interesting and of course is going to help you. I don't think you're going to get far in like CRO specifically without it, but the emotional side is so much more expansive and way more difficult to dive into because it's so much more ambiguous and murky and squishy, I feel like.
I can't disagree with that a bit. If we can, maybe Tesla with his brain implant will help us get a little bit better understanding of how people are processing, our performance, which is really, what it is. We're expressing ourselves, and it's a performance. It's a performance on the webpage. It's a performance in video, and it's squishy, as you say. It's hard to measure people's reactions to our performance.
Absolutely. Brian, would you want to do some rapid fire questions?
Okay, shoot.
They don't have to be super rapid answers, but who do you admire professionally and why?
Who I admire professionally and why? I think I already mentioned Seth Godin. He keeps coming up, and I actually got to meet him in Detroit. He watched my presentation in Detroit and was backstage when I got off and was complimentary. And I was just like a little fanboy. No, I don't think so. It was, it was a good performance. So, I admire what Roy Williams has built out there at the Wizard Academy. I think majority of my admiration goes to like movie directors, people who are able to bring a story, and that's just in their mind, and assemble the team and find the financing and create that sort of thing. I think if I wasn't a conversion scientist, I might be in the film industry. I don't know anything about it, so that could change, but, and the list of directors that I love to watch is pretty long. So,
do you have a couple favorites?
No. I think it depends on my mood and what I'm trying to explore. So,
gotcha. I would be a Tarantino, David Fincher, potentially Scorsese.
Scorsese, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Richard Linklater, of course, Austin.
Oh yeah, we gotta stay with the homeboys.
If you could create your own category in Jeopardy, what would it be, and would you get every question right?
What category would I get every question right? Definitely not about myself. My category in Jeopardy would be sayings with double meanings. I like the double entendre. I like the hidden meaning. I like communicating in a way that says one thing to your rational brain and communicates something else to your subconscious. So, that would probably be my category. Would I get them right? No.
Are you a connoisseur of puns and therefore dad jokes then?
Yes.
I love it. I think it's an underrated art form. What talent would you most like to have?
Oh my gosh, what talent would I most like to have? I would probably want to have the talent of singing.
That's awesome. I've said this before. I asked this question quite a bit, and you would be shocked at how many people want to be able to sing. Mm-hmm. Music instruments in general is a pretty common one, but I would probably say singing as well. I feel like you can get better at it, you can optimize it, but there's something native about it. Like you kind of have to have like you're never going to be Adele,
you're always carrying with you, right?
Yeah, I love that one. That's a great answer. Here's an interesting one. What do you consider the most overrated virtue?
The most overrated virtue. I mean, that would have to be, what's the best way to put it? I mean, the most overrated virtue is being right.
Yeah.
It flies in the face of curiosity. It closes you down for discovery. So that kind of intelligence in which you have all the right answers is the most overrated virtue, and it's way overrated in Western society.
Absolutely. And it's the perfect answer from an optimizer, I think. Is there a career choice that you considered but didn't pursue?
Boy, I've been of the nature to at least have tried almost everything I wanted to. But probably professional writer or filmmaker would be the direction I would go.
I feel like having written a book, you've gotten a large part of the way there.
That's the beauty of conversion sciences. I've been able to exercise, the performative part of my personality, and still, build a business.
I actually think that's the cool part about agencies in general, because like we were saying with the podcast, it's like, I kind of want to learn the skill and just have conversations with the people I want to talk to. So I get to do it. I want to write blog posts. I get to do it. Mm-hmm. Like you have a lot of creative freedom with what you can actually do through this agency lens. Okay, so an easy last one. What blogs, podcasts, influencers are you loving to follow right now?
We mentioned Pep. Pep is on has taken last year. I don't even know how far back it goes, but I love his focus on strategy. So that's been interesting. Adam Grant has been on my radar of late from a business standpoint. Beyond that, I've been kind of so inward looking that I don't have a lot of professional recommendations.
No, that's totally fine. 2 points on that. One, it perennially impresses me that Pep is able to wade through areas that are seemingly full of misinformation or BS or fluff and find the nuggets and actually communicate those in this clear way. I feel like he did that wonderfully with CRO. And now it's like this murky world of product marketing and brand and strategy in general, go to market. And it's like following him. It's like, I've tried to read so many books on this and didn't understand them. And now a couple tweets and I'm like, holy shit, it makes sense to me. So I've always admired that for sure.
Yeah. If I'm a contrarian, he makes me look like a conformist in terms of, I love that about him.
No willingness to bend or break. And then the other piece is you mentioned you were going inward focused, not as much attention to outward kind of consumption. I've been reading this book, or not really reading it, but going through the exercises called The Artist's Way. Have you heard of this one?
Oh yeah, I've done it.
Yeah. So there's a chapter in it where they talk about reading deprivation, I believe, because it's like writers will often procrastinate through like kind of consuming everything else and hearing others' thoughts and, listening to podcasts as opposed to just going on a walk and thinking your own things. So I actually think, especially for the more cerebral, especially for the knowledge workers, especially for the very type A people, it's really valuable to just turn off for a time, whether it's a day, a week, a month, whatever, and just see what thoughts of your own pop out.
Yeah. It's really hard. I did a retreat in which it was a 10-day silent retreat. You hand in your phone at the beginning and, spend most of the time meditating. And you want to talk about an unnatural state from my particular brain. Absolutely fantastic. I think we need to be trying stuff like that. They're little experiments, right? We're experimenters. We need to hack our own psyches a little bit and try things that seem really scary. Can be anything. I did a 7-day ride through the mountains. I'm not built like a rider, but it was something that terrified me enough that I knew I had to do it. Find those things to see what changing your environment so completely, what it reveals to you. I mean, there's not a lot to do on a bike for 100 miles while you're cranking up a mountain other than go within,
Yeah, I love that. That's a very cool note to end on. So thank you so much, Brian Massey.
This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it definitely is. Do you want to point people anywhere online to find you? Twitter, LinkedIn, website?
I'm on them all. You should be able to search them for them. LinkedIn. I don't spend a lot of time on Twitter. Don't reach out to me on Twitter. I won't see it. Primarily on LinkedIn, and then on our website, conversionsciences.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Brian. This was super fun.
It was. Thanks for having me.